Welcome back, my friends. Currently, we're on day 363 of Russia's disastrous invasion of Ukraine. And in today's video, we got dueling speeches. Biden and Putin face off in major Ukraine speeches. Let's start with President Biden first. I think he shocked the world by showing up in Kyiv. As an American, I'm surprised that he decided to go to the capital city, given that this is still an active war zone. But we have wonderful pictures of President Biden meeting with President Zelensky and the First Lady. Here is a little bit from Biden's speech that he gave in Kyiv.
That dark night, 1 year ago, the world was literally at the time bracing for the fall of Kyiv. Seems like a lot longer ago than a year, but think back to that year. Perhaps even the end of Ukraine. You know, 1 year later, Kyiv stands, and Ukraine stands. Democracy stands. The Americans stand with you, and the world stands with you.
And this is important to remember that all of the Western intelligence and security experts were telling President Biden that Ukraine wasn't going to fight, that Russia was going to roll over the country and take it between 3 and 7 days. Here we are, almost 365 days later. Here's a nice tweet from the president from 2 days ago. Putin thought Ukraine was weak and the West was divided. He thought he could outlast us. He was just plain wrong. 1 year later, here we stand together, united with the people of Ukraine. President Biden also signed the visitor guest book in Mariinsky Palace. This is what he wrote in the guest book. I am honored to be welcomed again in Kyiv to stand in solidarity and friendship with the freedom-loving people of Ukraine. Mr. President, please accept my deepest respect for your courage and leadership. Slava Ukraini, Joe Biden. Additionally, President Biden got this plaque on the Alley of Courage. It says February 24th, first phone call, February 20th, 2023, a visit to Ukraine. And the story of how President Biden made it to Kyiv is kind of incredible. But before we talk about that, I want to welcome back a returning sponsor on this channel. The sponsor of today's video is Surfshark VPN, and Surfshark VPN is an app and browser extension that encrypts all of your data while online to add an extra layer of protection to keep your personal information safe from hackers and trackers. Aside from its military-grade encryption, why is Surfshark the best VPN on the market? And it's because it's the only VPN that allows installation on an unlimited number of devices, all on one account for one price. Surfshark is great for sending and receiving files securely online or finding great shopping deals. But what I like about Surfshark is when using various streaming services such as Netflix, it allows me to unlock content available in other countries. As an example, a friend recently recommended I watch Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery, but I've not seen the first Knives Out movie that came out in 2019. For whatever reason, it's not available on Netflix here in the United States. But if I pull up Surfshark, I can change my country location to the United Kingdom. All I then have to do is refresh the page and boom. I can now watch the first Knives Out movie before seeing the more recent one. Likewise, I can switch my country location to other countries around the world in order to unlock great TV shows and movies to watch. There is no risk in trying Surfshark VPN as they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Use the promo code jakebro and sign up today and get 83% off, plus an extra 3 months for free. I want to thank Surfshark for being a sponsor on this channel. All of the money that I make from these sponsorships, minus taxes and fees, I will be donating to various Ukrainian causes. And if you saw my previous update video, I mentioned Macer Gifford. He was doing a fundraiser for the 131st Recon Battalion. And for those of you who donated, thank you so much. We absolutely crushed his fundraising expectations. He was hoping to raise about 10,000 US dollars in order to buy equipment and material for new members of his unit. We kind of bombed his fundraising page, and he ended up raising close to $30,000. He did message me on Twitter thanking for the shout out. So once again, for everyone who donated, thank you so much. So back to how did Biden get to Kyiv, and nobody's flying into the capital city these days. So Biden took a very special train, and Biden took a 10-hour train ride from Poland to Kyiv as U.S. fighter jets circled the Polish-Ukrainian border, making him the first sitting president to enter a war zone with no active U.S. military presence. So the Secret Service, of course, accompanied the president, but no active duty U.S. military personnel. This is the first time a president in history has ever done this, so I personally think it's quite impressive. President Biden was given the option of just going to Lviv on the other side of the Polish border. President Zelensky would have met him in Lviv, but Biden didn't want to do that. He wanted to send a strong signal by going to the capital city. Maybe someday there will be a Hollywood movie about this train ride. They could call it Rail Force One. This is a fun concept, and who knows. But when we think about history, this was a historical visit given that no sitting U.S. president has visited Ukraine in the last 15 years. So in Ukraine's modern history, Bill Clinton visited 3 times in the 90s. 2 of those times was to convince Ukraine to give up their nuclear weapons, which in retrospect was a mistake. The last time was George Bush in 2008, so this is pretty remarkable that President Obama went 8 years without visiting Ukraine. Likewise, President Trump, for his 4 years, also chose not to visit Ukraine. And part of the reason why for 15 years the United States stayed away is they didn't want to provoke Putin. They didn't want to anger the Russians. Let's not visit the country. Let's not send military aid or equipment or, engage in cooperation with the Ukrainians because we don't want to provoke the Russians into attacking them. We now realize this was all folly. Putin had already made up his mind in 2014. He was always going to attack Ukraine. He was always going to invade the country, regardless of what the West, NATO, or the United States did. Additionally, concerning this presidential visit by Biden, I think it's just a huge morale boost for the country, knowing that they're being supported by the President of the United States, Joe Biden visiting their historic landmarks, wearing a blue and yellow tie. Here's a tweet from Maria Avdiva. She's a security expert, and she simply says, "Thank you. This means a lot." And I also want to make the argument that politically, this trip means a lot for Biden as well. And the reason why is President Biden's political career is not done. He's running for re-election to be president another 4 years in November of 2024. So this is coming up in 623 days. And I don't think President Biden would have chosen to go to Kyiv and have this photo op, have all these pictures taken, if he was going to let the Russians win this war somehow prior to his political re-election. So this is politically now very important for Biden's political aspirations that Russia not win this war. Could you just imagine, Russia somehow taking the capital city of Kyiv and burning that note he left in the visitor's log and smashing that plaque on the Alley of Heroes? So I think Biden is 100% all in on making sure that Ukraine wins this war. And ideally, it's got to happen way before he starts campaigning for his own re-election. Biden also came bearing gifts. The next security assistance package from the United States worth $500 million was announced. Pretty routine stuff in it, just ammunition for the HIMARS, artillery ammunition, Javelin missiles. We've got infantry fire support team vehicles for the M2 Bradleys, as well as your general stuff like medical supplies. So, what was Russia's response to Biden's surprise visit to Kyiv? And of course, Moscow is going to downplay the significance of Biden's visit to Kyiv. Here's an article from RT News just to get the other side's perspective. And the title says United States notified Russia before Biden's Kyiv visit. The decision to inform Moscow was made for deconfliction purposes. So I actually see this as pretty good news that the United States military and the Russian military are talking regularly. There's a phone line somewhere between these two countries, and they're still giving each other updates and notifications, such as, hey, the President of the United States is going to Kyiv in a couple hours. Please don't bomb Kyiv, otherwise this might trigger a larger international event. Here's a tweet from the parody account Darth Putin. Day 362 of my 3-day war. The simple truth is I was too afraid of the consequences of trying to stop Biden visiting Kyiv. Fear is weakness, and that means I am so very screwed. I remain a master strategist. So, the rhetorical question is, why didn't they bomb Kyiv? Why didn't they try and assassinate President Biden if he's a Nazi and Zelensky's a Nazi and they're all Nazis? And it's because Russia's full of baloney. So with Biden stealing the world headlines, visiting Kyiv, Putin the next day had to give his speech, and it was kind of underwhelming. People were expecting some grand announcements, the declaration of martial law, closing the borders, the next round of mobilization. Is Putin finally going to start calling this war a war? And Putin didn't do any of that. They started the war. That's Putin's line that he keeps repeating. Russia's Putin blames the West and Ukraine for provoking this conflict. February 24th will mark 1 year since Russia mounted a large-scale invasion of Ukraine, beginning a ground war in Europe that Putin still refers to as a special military operation. So he's still not even calling his war a war. And I think it's important that we remind ourselves what the Russians were telling the world exactly 1 year ago. So this clip is of Putin's spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, and this is what he was telling the media 3 days prior to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
К разуму. Призываем задать себе вопрос, какой смысл России на кого-то нападать. Призываем вспомнить историю. Но, скажем так, с историей все-таки у них на Западе, как мы убедились недавно, не очень хорошо. Но напоминаем, что Россия на протяжении всей своей истории никогда ни на кого не нападала. Россия, которая пережила столько войн, это последняя страна.
So he says the West does not know our history. Russia has never attacked anyone. Geographically, how do you become the largest country in the world without attacking anyone? And there is a Wikipedia page titled List of Wars Involving Russia. And pretty much for 1,000 years, Russia has continuously been at war with everyone. Everyone in Central Asia, the Caucasus, and Europe. But let's be fair and just skip to the modern era. And here we have the invasion of Azerbaijan by the Russians, 1920. The invasion of Armenia by the Russians, 1920. The invasion of Georgia, 1921. Let's speed it up and maybe go to 1934, the Soviet-Russian invasion of Xinjiang. This is in China. We've got the Soviet invasion of Poland, back when the Russians were allied with the Nazis. Russia then continued by invading Finland. This is the Winter War of 1931. We then had the occupation and annexation by Russia of the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, then the Soviet occupation of Bessarabia. This is when they attacked Romania. So I'm pretty sure that Russia has attacked numerous people, even in the last century. 1968, the invasion of Czechoslovakia. What else we got here? I think there's two more. Yeah, the invasion of Afghanistan in 1979, and then, of course, the invasion of Georgia in 2008. So how the heck does Russia keep claiming that they've never attacked anyone in their history? And of course, Russian state TV, they loved Putin's speech. They're paid to say that, and if they don't say that, they'll be fired or arrested. So here is their reaction to Putin's speech.
Он смотрит на долгую перспективу. И мы можем констатировать, что у страны-то вот здесь все хорошо, никакой паники нет. Смотрите, собирались в Давосе там или в Мюнхене, они постоянно, вот, надо победить Россию, надо победить Россию, надо победить Россию, там паника какая-то уже. Президент спокоен совершенно. Да, мы победим, мы туда идем, мы идем туда аккуратно, мы идем туда размеренно, но мы знаем, куда мы идем. Вот это самое главное в послании, уверенность, спокойствие в нашем завтрашнем дне и единство.
So the West is panicking by sending weapons to Ukraine, and Russia is calm. Well, here are the live reactions of the people in the crowd at Putin's speech. Lots of nodding off and yawns and a couple eye rolls. And we know that this was the real Putin who gave the speech because he didn't let anyone in his government get within 30 meters of him. So anytime you see distance such as this, you know that's the real Putin. And anytime Putin is going through a busy business building, meeting with tech entrepreneurs in St. Petersburg, this is the body double. This is the guy that shakes hands and kisses babies. But there was one thing of note that Putin did say in his speech. Putin suspends Russia's participation in key nuclear pact with the United States. So this would be concerning the New START treaty. Now, Russia was already not in compliance with the treaty. The inspections stopped in 2020 when we had the COVID pandemic. So it was understandable why the inspections between Russia and the United States weren't happening, but Putin wanted out of this treaty. He didn't want to do it anymore. And I might make a separate video talking about the New START treaty. What you need to know is at the height of the Cold War, 1986, the United States had just over 20,000 nuclear warheads, and the Soviet Union had close to 40,000. Reagan and Gorbachev then started meeting regularly in order to discuss nuclear reduction of the stockpiles. This then continued under Bush Sr. and Yeltsin. It even continued under Obama and Medvedev in 2010. But Putin doesn't like arms controls treaty. He wants more nuclear weapons because his regular military is trash. What the United States is going to do in response to this, will we start increasing our own stockpile to always have near parity with Russia? I don't know. I honestly, I need to do some more research for you guys. And while Biden on the anniversary visits Kyiv, I think this is very telling that China's top diplomat headed to Moscow for the 1-year anniversary. So US President Joe Biden's surprise visit to Kyiv is followed by the top Chinese diplomat Wang Yi's visit to Moscow. So China is choosing to, on the 1-year anniversary, show support for Russia. And the United States says China is mulling weapons for Russia for their war in Ukraine. So Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Sunday that China was considering providing weapons to Russia in its war against Ukraine, warning Beijing that any supplies would cause a serious problem. If this happens, guys, this is going to be a nightmare for everyone. Unlike Russia, China is deeply integrated into both the European and the North American economies. If China starts supplying lethal force weapons to Russia, there has to be a response. There has to be at least some kind of economic sanctions, and this is going to cause havoc for the world economy. But China is snapping back at the United States, claiming, it might send weapons. Of course, they're, in the meantime, denying it. And China's response is, it is the United States, not China, that is continually sending weapons to the battlefield. This is according to Wang Wenbin, a spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry. And he says that the United States is shifting blame and spreading disinformation. I think everything that's come out of the Biden administration the last year has been pretty accurate about Iran supplying weapons and North Korea thinking about getting involved. So I think there is some intelligence getting out of China that they are seriously considering supplying weapons to Russia. All right, last couple things. Once Ukrainians found out that President Biden would be visiting Kyiv, people started photoshopping President Biden into different locations, speculating if he would visit this local tourist destination. President Biden really likes eating ice cream, so it's not difficult to find a good picture of him in order to Photoshop him into various locations around Kyiv eating ice cream. But people on the internet are just having fun. I can't really join in on the joke because I've never been to Ukraine. I don't know Aroma Kava. I'm assuming this is some kind of local coffee shop. But here's President Biden visiting the Buena Vista bar, which is popular with foreigners in Kyiv. Here's Biden taking a sip of Levitsky Rizdivian. I'm guessing this is some kind of Ukrainian malt liquor. And here's President Biden getting a hot dog from an Oko gas station. If I've ever been to an Oko gas station, I think I'd probably find this more funny. Last clip I have for you is of President Biden's motorcade going through this street that was shut down. And because the street was shut down, people knew that something was happening. Here's a video of a Ukrainian child watching President Biden's motorcade go by. That's all for this update video. Glory to the heroes, glory to Ukraine. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Don't forget about that link for Surfshark VPN if you're in the market for a new VPN. Comments or questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, take care, be safe.